Hi, I'm Carol Gold.
I'm Steve Clark.
We're here at Above the Fray podcast, and since we spend a lot of time talking to you about the candidates and sort of the downside of both of them, I thought we'd talk a bit about personal responsibility, meaning, do we have any part in why we are where we are? Meaning, we have two of the most disliked candidates with the highest unfavorables of any candidates that have run in recent years, or probably, I think, ever in the case of Hillary Clinton, unfavorables. So how did we get here? Well, I think we got here because political correctness became a bar to free speech. People were afraid for a very long time, and over a period of time more and more afraid to speak the truth of what they believe, because political correctness made it socially unacceptable to speak the truth. So again, I'm going to make some enemies. The Democratic Party made it particularly difficult to speak the truth about certain communities, like the LGBTQ community, like Black Lives Matter, like Muslims, be they radical extremists or be they just American Muslims, it doesn't matter. You weren't allowed to say certain things. And so political correctness, which was honed by Hollywood, by the culture, by the arts, in conjunction with a Democratic administration that for the last 8 years has made taboo certain words, certain opinions. North Carolina, I think you mentioned to me earlier before we went on air,
right,
what happened with the bathroom situation and transgender. You just can't say things. So what it did, Steve, the Democrats
created a vacuum.
They created, thank you, into which a Donald Trump lands. Now, he's a clown at times, and he's a real estate developer, and he's an egomaniac. But he says things finally that's brewing and festering in so many people that I think we need to own responsibility for allowing the Democrats, for allowing Hollywood to take us down that road and to be such sheeple, to be so willingly victims of silencing our own mouths.
If there'd been a free chance to speak your piece, to be allowed to speak freely, Donald Trump wouldn't exist. But at the same time, the Republicans are equally to blame.
Right.
Over the last two elections, the Republicans in the midterm elections have had resounding victories on not only on the government level, the state government level, but on the federal level in terms of the amount of seats that have changed from Democrats to Republican Senates, to the point that it was, I want to say, the last midterm election, it was the largest swing in changes of parties since the Civil War. The point being is that the people had felt frustrated with the representation and the direction of the economy and the direction of the way the party was going. This news was definitely not found in the media, but it was found in the electorate. What happened with that power is they've done nothing.
Yeah.
There's been no opposition to Obama, and there's been no opposition to his policies. Essentially, the political leaders at the same time have been stifled by this speech. So even when elected, they're not using their power to stop some of the things that Obama's been trying to do.
Well, I think you're being gracious when you say when elected, they've been stifled.
Yes.
They've lied to their constituents. Yes. So here's the part that's personal responsibility. The Mitch McConnells who get elected and reelected on promises they break, meaning lies they tell, because we call them promises or agendas, but they're lies when they don't follow through. The populace keeps reelecting those people. That's the part that's our responsibility, because in those midterm elections, we can't blame the Electoral College and say, well, the system is such that it doesn't matter what the popular vote is, because then you've got to deal with the Electoral College, and who understands that? There's no Electoral College in midterms. It's popular vote.
Right.
But we keep reelecting these crooks and these liars, and then we say, how did we get here? So again, I want to say that we got here through our own willful negligence, our own dropping of the baton, so to speak. We can get it back the same way. The challenge is going to be, you're not going to get it back overnight, because it didn't happen overnight. It happened over decades, and in some cases, when you talk about the progressives in both parties, you're talking about a 100-year transition from Woodrow Wilson till now. So we can take back personal responsibility, and therefore we then can take back personal power, and therefore we then can become more meaningful and impactful citizens But it isn't going to happen overnight, and we're a very impatient culture because the technology has made us very greedy for instant gratification.
But I'll tell you something interesting about the Trump situation. The media I would say, is very well aware of the way that they've stifled speech. And why do I say that? Look at every day when Trump says something really kind of egregious or stupid. Really, the talking heads come out and says, "Oh, he's finally done it. He's crossed the boundary. He's done. You can't cross that boundary in our world. You cannot do it." And every day he gets away with it. He gets away with it. He gets away with it. What does that tell you? The media tells you they've tried to establish and set lines on things you can say and can't say. And Trump has come in and said, "Enough." And his followers, his supporters, or his voters are saying, "Enough of it already. We want this free exchange of ideas." Whether it's absurd or not, we'll decide. It's not for the media to decide what we can say and what we can't say.
You know, it's funny. It's sort of fantasy, but I've heard people say, it isn't going to be either one of them. Something's going to happen. And when I hear that, I think, she's got a blood clot floating around her body.
Right.
And
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and we don't know what his health, and she's got that coughing thing, and we don't know what that's all about. And her medical records seem to be, while they seem to be very transparent, they seem to show somebody who's really in like great health. And all we've seen her do is have health issue after health issue.
And that's the fact they're both 70.
And they're both 70. So anything could happen. Or in his case, he could walk away at any point because he's that way. He could decide, I'm not going to win this. It's rigged, and I'm out of here before I lose because I'm not a loser. So there is this sense that something astonishing could happen, and we could wind up, if she died, we could wind up with Biden or Elizabeth Warren or somebody else. My concern is we get the leaders we deserve. I believe that. Who do we deserve? We've allowed ourselves to sink to a level where the best two people this nation could put forward and allowed to be put forward are Donald Trump and a Hillary Clinton. I don't know who we wind up with because I'm concerned about if there's justice in the world and it's blind. I'm concerned about what is just for us now at this point because we've abdicated. Do we really deserve a Gandhi, a Margaret Thatcher, a Golda Meir, a Ronald Reagan, a George Washington? Do we deserve that person? Have we exhibited the kind of citizen responsibility that would garner us a leader like that? Or have we become who these two people are?
I think the scary thing is that really this election is going to, when this election does take place, and if you end up with either a Donald Trump or a Hillary Clinton, you're going to have a segment of the population that completely feels I am no longer in a position where I feel like my votes count for somebody that I feel like being governed under. And so I think the problem with having two candidates with such huge unfavorables, there's going to be a large segment of the population that it can be very dissatisfied.
Well, they can be dissatisfied and then they can be angry. And then we can get into a whole different mindset about what do you do when that much of a nation feels disenfranchised, feels that they have no vote, and that in fact something very crooked is running the system. And I'm not talking about Trump's use of the word crooked or rigged. I'm talking about Americans who have felt for a very long time that our country has run amok and that there is an elite group of people that determine what happens in this country. And that, for example, in '08, she was promised that when Obama was done, this was hers. And look who they ran against her, Martin O'Malley and Tim Webb, what's his
James
first name?
Webb.
James Webb and Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders. These were people who were never going to seriously challenge her. They never expected Sanders even to get as far as he did because this was the coronation. This was for being a good girl, waiting the 8 years for what was stolen from her in '08. And so we have a great deal of the population in both parties, independents alike, libertarians, who really believe that we are so corrupted that we're in a post-constitutional America where we don't have a say any longer, and this is all being manipulated like Oz with the wizard behind the curtain.
I just want to adjust one fact. If you went back when Bill Clinton was president, granted all his defects and his faults, when he lost the midterm election, he decided to change course and implement many of the policies of the Republican Party. Bad or not, what he did is that he understood that he governed with the will of the people. And the will of the people had spoken, and he listened to them. That, I believe, there's no politician that does it anymore.
Right. And we don't want to leave you pessimistic. So what we want to say is, please remember, you may not have power over what happens in Washington right now, but you have power over your own life, what's going on in your life. So where you see local corruption, grab onto that, fight that, because it begins one step at a time with each one of us, the same way it went awry, one step at a time with each one of us. I'm Carol Gold.
I'm Steve Clark.
Thanks for listening, and join us next time here at Above the Fray podcast. Bye.